In the throes of the Michigan offseason, Memorial Day weekend, Michigan Mailbag keeps us all sane. Coming up right now.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Friday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And as I look at this, I was like wondering what that strange light is. It's as far as the video feed, it is my actual light, which I did not think was in frame. Anyhow, we're going to get right to it. Leaders and best, starting us off in the Michigan Mailbag. James Crudup at James Crudup 6. When it comes to the culture change at Michigan, we hear a lot about what players like Hutchinson did. We hear a lot about what Biff Poggi did. We don't really hear about Harbaugh. Aside from coaching changes, do you know of anything specific he did to help change the culture? As far as the last couple of years, I think the biggest thing, honestly, is delegate. I think one of the things that has sometimes been a problem for Jim Harbaugh in his Michigan tenure, particularly more early on, is when he was a little bit more hands-on. It just wasn't that. It just sometimes. How can I put this without really kind of delving into things that I'm not at liberty to say? I had heard from some people that sometimes he would try to change some things, make some unilateral decisions kind of at his own behest without really just consulting people. And sometimes it would upset the status quo at times. And sometimes it works out great and sometimes it didn't. And I think that now he's a little bit more willing to delegate based off of the conversations that I've had, and spanning honestly back into 2021. He trusts his team a lot more. It's a little bit less competitive inside the building in some ways. Still very much a meritocracy, but it isn't necessarily like when he came, everything's a meritocracy, but he's taking on more of a CEO role, if that makes sense. And he's doing a much better job of doing that, letting the people who he has as experts overseeing the positions and such. There isn't as much meddling as maybe there was earlier in his tenure. That's it. Take it for what it's worth. That's just kind of what I got there. Josh Jadicki, currently on a road trip to Texas. So with the road trips you take to games around the conference, what are your top road trip tips? I didn't see the tips part the first time that I read it, and I was like, oh, my top road trips, this will be easy. I would say have a plan as far as your entertainment. Sometimes that might be like I talk to my best friend usually about a half hour to an hour a day. So I try to integrate that in with my road trips. Sometimes, especially because on Fridays we tend to maybe talk a little bit more. Then that means that I will tend to talk to him. Maybe like if I'm going to Penn State, I might talk to him all the way to Cleveland, right? I try to stop as little as possible. I try to really get there. I want to spend all, because it's amazing how much time can be taken away from maybe like your planned desire to get somewhere by 3 or something like that if you make a bunch of stops. I've had the road trips where I've had some people with me and we make a ton of stops. I have others where I don't, and it's like I'm almost always on schedule, maybe early if I stick to Indianapolis is obviously the most common road trip that I do. Whether it's for Indiana games, I've obviously went there for Purdue. You got the Big Ten championship. You've got the Big Ten media days. And I always have like a plan in my mind of like what time I want to get there. And if I just try to make one stop, there's a Love's on the Indiana side of the border from Ohio. And I try to make that it. And when have done that, then everything goes great. But when I've had road trips and I've had to stop a bunch of times, what could be a 4 or 5 hour drive can end up being a 6-7 hour drive. So try to take as few stops as possible, have a plan, have some podcasts loaded up, and it can be easy breezy if that's the case. Also, leave as early as you can, always. Welcoming him back into this rotation, even though he does not deserve it thanks to this question, Trent Noop at Trent Noop. Would you rather buy an Xbox or put your house on field turf? He also says that knowing I'm allergic to field turf, I have to take Claritin D usually before a game, sometimes just straight up Benadryl. If I forget, I have a hard time breathing. I get really sleepy afterwards. My face starts swelling, all that kind of stuff. I'd rather put my house on field turf. Yeah, I'd rather just deal with that than get an Xbox. I don't know why. See, I'm a PS5 and Nintendo Switch guy. I'm not even a big gamer. What is there for me to play on Xbox? I can't play any of my favorite games on it. So I don't know what the point would be. Can't play The Last of Us. I can't play Horizon. I can't play God of War. I can't play. I think Red Dead Redemption is probably the only thing I'd be able to play that I really love. I'm guessing the Jedi Survivor game's on there too, so maybe that too. Jimmy Whitner at Jimmy Whitner 1. Who is the fastest player now that DJ is gone? I think Amorian Walker would probably be the one that they'd say internally, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Roman Wilson. Number 2, how many home night games do you think we'll have? Hopefully only one. I think there was only one last year, right? And that was Hawaii. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if the season opener is a night game. Maybe they'll make like Purdue. I feel like they'll throw a bone to like Peacock, they'll select it. Purdue or Rutgers, I think, could also be a night game. Hopefully that's it, to be honest. Jonathan Joseph at JJoseph2156. Thoughts on MSU moving their final home game to Ford Field? I know Michigan has played neutral site games before, but do you ever see them doing it again and sacrificing a home game? I think it just depends on how many home games they have, right? They're not going to do it if it's going to leave them with 5 home games. They're just not going to. But if it's a situation where maybe they have 7 home games and a neutral site game, I think they'd be fine with it. I hope they do it again. Honestly, I'm not in love with neutral site games, but I'll take a big time opponent over just a bunch of non-opponents, essentially. As far as MSU moving their final home game to Ford Field, I just don't think it behooves them very well. I've seen other people say, hey, actually, it's pretty great because people are home for Thanksgiving. A lot more are in the Metro Detroit area, and they're just going to go, be able to go right down the road. I just think it having a neutral site game in conference is awful. If that was MSU versus, say, Louisville or MSU versus Oklahoma, then I think it would be more fine in some ways. But when it's in conference, I don't think, that's a really good move personally. Welcoming him in to the Leaders and Best, Spencer Whitmore, per his own request. At Spencer Whitmore, let's say Harbaugh stays 10 to 12 years, wins 75% plus of his games, 3 to 4 Big Ten championships, but never wins a natty. How will his legacy be remembered 10 plus years from now? Depends on how it ends, to be honest. As long as if he retires, coming off of a win over Ohio State, a couple wins over Ohio State, has kind of an even the score against Ohio State, coming off a Big Ten championship, it will be remembered very fondly. If he loses the next 4 against Ohio State and wins one more Big Ten championship, maybe no more, then it's not going to be remembered that fondly. Honestly, he'll be looked at kind of as John Cooper, even though I don't think that's fair, just kind of given what he inherited versus where the team is now, which is very much on him. All right, we're going to continue on. We got so many more questions coming up here momentarily. Before we do that, if you want to get into the comfort kingdom, then I have got just the thing for you. Birddogs is revolutionizing comfort when it comes to your pants as well as your shorts. Whether you're looking for something dressy for the gym, for going out to the lake this summer, and summer starts really right now this weekend, or anything in between, Birddogs has got you covered. You look and you'll feel better wearing Birddogs, and they allow you the versatility of going from the beach or the golf course right to dinner or to your next meeting. Take my guy, Bert Kreischer. the machine. The guy that I've tried, he and I joked he should be a Michigan honorary captain one day. We don't know why that's a joke, but it was. He wakes up at his lake house, goes for a swim, smokes a cigar, grills, chills with his family, all in his summer shorts. So you can go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege, enter the promo code lockedoncollege, and they'll throw in a free tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege with the promo code lockedoncollege. Get that free Yeti style tumbler with your next order. All right, we are on to the Victor's Valiant here in the Michigan Mailbag. Mark Z at Mark Zimke. Have I totally missed it, or has there been no new talk about Harbaugh's contract extension or the results of that burger thing? They're waiting on the results of the burger thing, the NCAA violations for whatever is going to happen with there before the contract extension happens. So that's just where it is. We're just in limbo until that. So you didn't miss anything. Nothing's happened on either front. Clark at Blue for Life 8. What's your favorite change that Harbaugh brought to the program? Mine is switching the uniforms from Adidas to the Jordan brand. I mean, that's maybe among mine. I mean, it would have actually, I should say it would have been among mine, but Adidas, like the year they switched, Adidas went next level with so many of their things. I almost exclusively wear, I shouldn't say exclusively because I wear a lot of different shoes. I have more shoes than I should. But when I'm going for a walk or going to be on the football field, my main pairs of shoes are almost always Adidas Ultra Boosts. I've come to really love what Adidas has done in the last couple of years overall, really from like 2016 onward. So actually that year forward, ever since Adidas rep sent me a couple pairs of Ultra Boost and NMDs, and I was hooked after that. Favorite change that he's brought otherwise? I mean, winning is probably the biggest one. Just this, I don't know that there's one like particular thing like that really stands out to me. It really is just, it's about the culture and all of that kind of stuff. And I know he's changed some things here and there. Maybe I can tell you some of the things I don't like, but I'm not going to do that. It's mostly media related. I think that's probably the big fan facing one. I can't think of anything else that's like really just stands out to me. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just forgetting because everything's been so incremental to me. Also keep in mind, I started covering the team and paid the closest attention starting in 2015, his first year. So I might not really recognize some of the things that were going on beforehand. Yes, I was paying attention as a fan, went to every game in 2014, but I can't necessarily recall a lot of like big things he did that are necessarily fan or team facing. All right, James Kovalevsky at Coach_Kovo. Pretty sure I say your last name differently every single time. Do you think the Big Ten should move away with divisions in the future? I think they probably will. Do I want them to? I actually don't, because even though it's like, yeah, you want the best two teams or whatever, I really don't want it to become Michigan plays Ohio State 2 weeks in a row every year. And every now and again, another team moves up. And maybe it would end up being good for a team like Penn State, or Wisconsin, maybe potentially. I don't know. Wisconsin's probably better off with the divisions. So I just don't want that, because that's just not, especially if I mean, it really goes either way. If either team that wins, it's going to be a lot harder for them to win the next week, the Big Ten championship game. Michigan very well could have won the Big Ten championship in maybe like 2016 or 2018 if they had another shot. So, I mean, it can benefit Michigan, but it also could hurt Michigan. So I just don't like that idea. So I personally don't want it out of my own way that I view the conference, but I see why it would make sense, especially once it gets to 16 and beyond. Anton says, Smita Mangala. It says, Smita Mangala, thoughts on Win 1000 possibly being a possibility this season, especially if the team that gets Win 1000 also brings home a natty. What a time to be a fan. I think it's very cool, and it's something that people are going to try to take it away from Michigan. If you didn't know, they need 11 more games. So that Win 1000 Very well could come Penn State, could come Maryland, could come Ohio State. If everything goes to plan, it will come Penn State. And yeah, it's pretty cool that could be the case if they could win a national championship. But because no other team's there. And certainly there's going to be a lot of rival fans that like to say, like, oh, counting games against Saline High School. It's like, guess what? Your program does it too. So if your program's been around for any amount of time, you've got some wins on there that no one's going to advertise now. It doesn't really matter, and there are certainly teams that played longer than Michigan that don't have as many wins as Michigan, or have played nearly as long as Michigan and still don't have as many wins as Michigan. So that's what it is. I'm not the one at William Cawthorne 9. I heard you say Michigan will make it to the Natty but won't win it. What would you give? What would give you the confidence to say that they'll win it? Honestly, I won't be confident about it. There's nothing that I can say right now, or they could tell me right now that'll give me any confidence that they'll actually win a national championship until they do it. It's just, it's hard to win a national championship in college football. I think it's hard to even say that they'll win a college football playoff semifinal game because they've won one postseason game under Jim Harbaugh. We've gone over that ad nauseum. I'm not trying to feed into the rival narrative, but like this last one against TCU was one that they wanted and one that they should have won. It's probably one of only a couple in the Jim Harbaugh era that's had any kind of internal, like, this matters across the board, Is there any way possible your cast can be longer than 30 minutes? It's my favorite cast, yours and Out of the Blue. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. No, that's the Locked On is all about having shorter podcasts. So I'm not supposed to even go over 30 minutes. Sometimes I do, especially on the mailbag. But I'm not supposed to. So unfortunately, no. There was a point in time when we were doing it, then it seemed like I was going like 40 minutes every week, and then it was just like across the board. They're like, all right, no, we got to keep it around 28 minutes max. For a while, it was supposed to be 21, and then it was supposed to be 25. I'm getting into some inside baseball there, but 30 minutes is essentially kind of the goal, the cap. So we'll try to do as best we can, even over the summer when we're supposed to officially go down to 3 episodes a week, and try to give you 5. That's going to be the hope and the goal. Might not be every week. If I can find something to talk about every day, we'll do that for you. Perry Mitchell at Perry Mitchell 08. In your opinion, was the Shemy oversight, that's as lightly as I'm willing to put it, an issue of cronyism or lack of due diligence? Left to fester, things like this can derail a program. I don't really know, and I'll just kind of leave it to I'm going to let the podcast edit on Monday stand alone as far as all of the comments I have on that. I don't really want to relitigate that or any more of my thoughts on it because it's a touchy topic, and I feel like it took a lot that I had in me to do that Monday episode. John Legend at I Am Stefanzonia. Please talk about the impending commitment of waffles, however you want to say it, and think of some other breakfast names we can recruit. Well, I don't know of any other. I don't know if there's a pancake out there that plays offensive line. That'd be perfect. But it certainly looks like Owen Waffles, I think is how you probably pronounce his name, who is looks like he's flipping from Notre Dame. He decommitted from Notre Dame. He's got another visit coming up to Michigan. Michigan just continues to be really good on the recruiting trail. It's funny because I did like my own little best guess list about a month ago as far as the recruiting landscape, and it's just a bunch of new names start popping up out of nowhere while still keeping the majority of the names that I said. It's just kind of crazy. KM at Keith _1906, finishing us out in segment 2. I listened to your story about your experience at the age of 11. Are you saying that people, you just take their... Okay, wait. I listened to your story about your experience at the age of 11. Are you saying that people, you just take the verbal abuse and hope it will cause their behavior to change? I just want to make sure I understand your position clearly. So this is talking about from the podcast on Monday. No, I'm not saying you just take what everyone gives to you per se, but you have to. If I want to change someone's heart or someone's mind on something, it's being a doormat isn't necessarily the right way, but being abrasive is also not. Every situation is different. I can't put a blanket on it. And I wasn't even a doormat then. I was actively nice back to the person calling me names. And eventually he was like, it just realized the error. So that's just how, that sometimes being kind overcomes, and I would say more often than not, kindness can overcome. So that's my position. It varies, right? That's how that situation was. But anyhow, all right, we've got more questions coming up, and we will finish this out here in just a moment. All right, we've got, I'm not going to count. Let's just get into it. Expo 67, NordQ. It's like Nordique without the E at the end. Do you see Alex Orji getting used in a package much like JJ was when he was backing up Cade? I'm not sure yet. I think that's certainly within the realm of possibility, especially because he could run and everything. And I think you want to get someone acclimated for next year in case JJ decides to move on, but I couldn't say with any certainty, but I certainly could see it. I think he's looked really good when he's been called upon, in games, spring game, all that kind of stuff. Original Farm Boy 1 at Original Farm Bow 1. Michigan seems to have a lot of offers and predictions for defensive line and edge. How many defensive line and edge will they take? They're going to take a lot. I couldn't give you an exact number. As it stands right now, continues to be fluid. Keeping in mind some linebackers could even be considered edge. They hadn't taken quite as many as they have before, but I think I could see that number being like 8, right, out of this entire class. I think that's going to be a high number. So I could see them continuing to do that. Guys like Darian Mayo, and I can't even tell you a lot of the names anymore because it just seems like every day I'm writing a new edge rusher, defensive lineman who's got Michigan in their top group. It's all starting to kind of be a cloud in there. Paul H. Lorne at Paul H. Lorne. Who wins if Michigan's offense squares off against Michigan's defense? I would normally say the defense, but the offense actually looks pretty good in the spring game. I'm still going to stay with the defense, but I think it would be close. I just think that the defense is just slightly more well-oiled, and that's not to say anything, but I think as long as it's kind of as close to a draw as you can make it, especially considering what we know about Michigan's defense, then that would probably bode really, really well for Michigan at the moment. College football is kind of offensive at this point, but Georgia's kind of shown you that it can be defensive as well, even though some teams just didn't necessarily play as much defense. But I think you have to have a top-tier defense to win a national championship, but I think you have to also... We've talked about this in the last couple of weeks. You have to have that high-rated offense as well. And I think Michigan's kind of right there. So I think that's the good news. MM at Wolverines MI at Michigan. Wolverines, Michigan. Where's our biggest weakness? I know people have said the wide receiver position. Personally, I think it is our defensive line. Edge rusher is, I think, a question mark. Interior defensive line, I think is a full-on strength. If I was to say the biggest weakness, I'm going to say wide receiver probably, because it's just not, it has potential. It's a question mark. It's not high flying at this juncture. And it's one of the two components that you need in the passing game. I think more confident about the cornerback situation than I do overall the wide receiver core, even though the two of the guys that are going to be starring in it have started in the offense the last 2 years. I just need to see more, because it's like when you just got two guys and you say, okay, those two I feel good about. I don't know about the rest. That's a problem. So yeah, wide receiver is a much bigger issue. And I guess corner opposite Will Johnson could be as well, but technically you could say you got Will Johnson and Mike Sainer still, and that makes me fine, right? Makes me happy rather. Ben Ricketts at RickettsBen92 with the Shemy news. You anticipate Michigan will fill the position he was hired for, expand the recruiting department. He was expanding the recruiting department. That was part of it, I believe. I do think that someone had moved on, Jonathan Hurd Bond or something. They are continuing to expand the recruiting department. So, yeah, I do think they'll fill it. I just don't know. It doesn't necessarily mean it'll be in the same exact role. Michigan under Harbaugh, one thing, I guess is one thing that they've changed, but every coach changes this no matter where they go, is just the who does what always tends to be changing, right? And we've seen that, right? Different people have had different roles, even within. Chris Bryant's had a million different roles. Sometimes they'll bring in, they have a director of recruiting that is one way, Chris Partridge is completely different than Albert Karshnia, who's completely different than Matt Dudek. There's a lot of different things that they have done with that position. I think they'll probably fill it, and I could see them continue to expand as well. I think they probably need to. All right, finishing us out with a trolling question here. Donald at Will Flex for Food. Question: I've noticed Michigan's beat writers have done nothing but take victory laps with the small amount of success they've finally been able to grasp. At what point does Michigan actually win something to justify their larger than life heads? So I didn't pull this. I had it up. I closed the window to make sure I had another question pulled up. So I don't know if you're a Ohio State fan. I don't know if you're a Michigan State fan. But either way, no matter what you are, when will Michigan win something? Well, it's won 2 conference championships in a row. So that's winning something. It's beaten Ohio State twice in a row. And I'm trying to see if I can find out what kind of what you're a fan of. I don't seem to be able to tell by your Twitter account. But I'm going to guess Ohio State because they've been really on edge. I had another trolling question that was really upset about I understand a lot of people don't like the rivalry jab articles. Part of the job when you're writing. Sometimes if you're writing for the type of team site like I am, it's going to be kind of something that you do here and there. But it's Michigan's won some stuff. And one of the things that I think is funny that I see is it's become a narrative all offseason is Ohio State crowing about their national championship from 9 years ago. 9 years ago. We're talking almost 10 years ago. You know who won the national championship 10 years ago? Florida State. You know who was in the college football playoff the following year? Michigan State. Florida State is finally relevant again. Finally. But when you think of that Jameis Winston Florida State team, doesn't that feel like an eternity ago? 2014, the year that Ohio State beat Oregon, that was the same year that they had the kid reporter at the press conference for Oregon doing Jesus Girls and Marcus Mariota. How long ago was that? Michigan went 5-7 under Brady Hoke. Brady Hoke was the head coach of Michigan. Last time Ohio State won a national championship. That was a very long time ago. You're 0-2 against Michigan the last 2 years. You just better embrace that at the moment for what it is. As far as Michigan reporters, I can tell you that none of us care as much as a lot of fans think that we do, especially rival fans. And I think a lot of it is because I know that Ohio State and Michigan State reporters actually do care a lot more than a lot of us on the Michigan beat do. And that's just the truth, unfortunately, for however you want to take that. All right, that's going to do it for us today. And we'll be back when we're back. Maybe over the weekend, maybe not. Who knows? Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will be back soon. Peace.